I'm not even joking when I say that is a literal nightmare. Like, a literal nightmare I have about public speaking is someone, I'll have forgotten the topic that I signed up to do, and it'll be a topic that I would just wing it, but it wouldn't be very good.
Thank you, folks, for correcting me. Oh, my goodness. And I do a fair amount of public speaking, if you can believe it or not.
Well, I'm so pleased to be here today, and I actually know a lot of people in this room. We work with many ARCs across the state of New York, and also many human services agencies, and what we help them with is their marketing and their communications. I'm hoping today we can have a conversation, so if you have any questions or anything while I'm speaking, please feel free to just interrupt me and just go ahead and ask. Making the most of a limited marketing budget in the last few years has become obviously an even more compelling topic as budgets for marketing have decreased significantly. And really we're going to talk today about a lot of the different tools that are available to use that you've all been confronted with and selecting for your individual agency. And hopefully we can talk a little bit about our experience, and you can benefit from our experience working with many organizations like yours on what works, what doesn't, and just how to be the most efficient possible with some of these things. So today we're going to talk about some basics. Again, some of you have more experience than others, I'm assuming. So some things might be a little simple, some things might be a little bit more advanced, and hopefully we can meet somewhere in the middle. The first item is developing a strategy. The second, how your brand fits into all this. The third is media selection, where we're going to talk about all those different medias that are available to you, TV, radio, print, online. I'm going to spend a little bit extra time on online, and then just a brief note on some cool things that are going on with fundraising and how that relates to small and large gifts. So the first item is the strategy. This item, and again, anyone that wants this presentation afterwards, I can email it to you. This item is often not even discussed. There's marketing going on, there's communications going on, but there's not even a basic strategy. So we try to simplify it into defining 6 major items. The first one is defining your target groups. Basically, who are the groups that you're doing the marketing for? So in our experience with organizations like yours, these come into these categories. So participants and families, supporters, community and press, employment, and then this is often where we fall, everyone, trying to market to everyone. And this, I would say, is typically the big mistake that an agency makes. Their communications are very broad, and they're trying to complete they're trying to get a message across, but it's to everyone, so it falls short. So really, even if, as I'm talking, you want to craft your own little mini strategy, by the end of me going through these groups, you'll actually wind up with a very basic strategy. So if you know that your big issue is employment, and you can always go back and redo this for other groups, but basically you say, okay, so our group are employees. Now the second is the demographics for the group that you've selected. So you say, okay, well, we know that the potential employees we're looking for are 22 years to 30 years old. They typically have this income level, and we know we're only interested in this county. So now we've defined the group, and we've defined the demographics that relate to that group, and we have our audience selected. Now once we have that selected, this becomes a lot easier, defining what the message is to that group. So if we basically say it's employment, we craft that to that group. So maybe your message to potential employees is, quote unquote, always hiring, something like that, or whatever it might be. And then really making sure that it's very short, clear, consistent, and memorable, which is also something that's usually an issue. Now once you have your audience defined and your message defined, because of the order that we're laying this out, the tools that you select to reach that group will become a lot easier. So when we're talking about should we do radio, should we do online, should we do print, once we have those first 2 items selected, the tools become a lot easier, because we pretty much, you can go to your radio station, you can say, what are the demographics of your radio station? You can, online, you can just Google what the demographics are for online. You know your individual geography if more people are reading the paper than are going on Facebook. So this will allow you to basically select your tools, and also based on a budget, it'll help you select the tools as well. So then we like to talk about what is the trackable action. Now, unfortunately, most of the time, the client or the agency wants some type of, they want to know if it's working. And of course, you're spending money on a billboard, you want to know if that billboard is yielding any type of result. But a lot of these tools, really the trackable action, unfortunately, has to be none. There really is no trackable action. We can't go back and say we spent $6,000 on a billboard and we got 10 employees, or we got 20 people to sign up for services. But if we do define trackable action, it's still important to understand what we want. So we want service utilization. We want them to fill out a form, make a donation, sign up, whatever it might be, event attendance. But really defining that, what you want to happen, but understanding that you might not necessarily know for sure what happened. And we'll talk a little bit about that in a little bit. And then the big one, defining the responsibility. Who is going to put this campaign together, create the creative, run the media? If you're working with an agency, is it going to be them? Is it going to be internal? But most importantly, being realistic. Because a lot of times we see these very large, ambitious plans or ideas, but there's no infrastructure to execute it. We're working with an agency in New Jersey. It's an ARC in New Jersey. And they basically wanted to get involved with online marketing and social media. And the first thing we were treated to was a 3-page spreadsheet on all the different social media tools and how all the different departments were going to use the tools. And this is an agency. This is an agency with a Facebook count of maybe 50. So I'm looking at this giant spreadsheet, and there's 2 people in the room who are already stretched thin. And I'm thinking, who is going to do this? And there was no answer to that. And that's a typical example of an unrealistic marketing plan. There's really no manpower on the ground to actually execute the plan. So it's really important in these plans to be realistic with your manpower and also the expertise that you have on hand. And then finally, as far as the responsibility goes, who's going to implement it, who's going to adjust it, and who is going to report on it. And this is a really important part of that responsibility. So you get it all running, but the set it and forget it plan is often a very large mistake, and it's often attributed to, oh, the direct mail campaign didn't work, or the billboard didn't work. And that's because we got it done, we sent it out, and we called it a day. And then there was none of this. There was no adjustments, there was no reporting, and it just kind of falls short. And then finally, setting the goals. So the ultimate goal of all of this is we want more of what? We want more website visits, event attendance, donations, sign-ups, applications, whatever it might be. So once we have these 6 things defined, we have a very basic strategy outline. And when you have this outline, it's a lot easier to go to the leadership of the organization and say, this is what we're trying to do, and this is why, and this is who we're going to reach, this is who's going to monitor it and adjust it. But when we just go with a very arbitrary plan, like we want to be on the radio or something like that, that's when it's harder to allot those dollars towards marketing. So, anyone have any questions on developing a marketing plan? Do any agencies, how many agencies here have like a basic strategy in place? A few do. Okay. So, that brings me to your brand and its value. And brand has become obviously a bigger issue for you recently with the ARC of US and basically who's going to apply it and when and how and what's the best way to do that. Now, brand is always a tricky subject because a lot of times we're always kind of discussing with the organization the value of their brand. Why would they invest in their brand, whether it be internally or externally with somebody like us? And the answer is that it's very foundational. For your brand, for all of those marketing items and your strategy to work, a strong brand will make that exponential, the effects of your marketing exponential, which we'll talk about in a moment. So, like I just said, foundational value to any marketing plan. It's kind of core. That's why all the most successful companies and not-for-profits in the world have very strong, consistent brands, and in a lot of cases have entire departments that don't even work on marketing, just work on their brands, like McDonald's. McDonald's has an entire department, and all they're focused on is brand control. So branding is big. You're getting a cumulative value from your branding. When an organization has weak branding and engages in marketing, there's no cumulative buildup to that understanding and recognition of the marketing. So even though branding can sometimes be an initial investment in time and energy and money, the long-term value of a strong brand is really fundamental to a good marketing program. And I always like to use the Subway example. So we've got Subway over here, and we've got the local deli. Now, unfortunately, in this country, Subway has won this battle. Does anyone have any ideas why Subway would be so much more successful in general?
Their marketing to being healthier and that you can lose weight, the Jared campaign.
Okay.
Because you know exactly what you're going to get before you walk in the door at Subway.
Yep.
Consistency.
Consistency, yeah. All right answers. I mean, it's a big company, they've got systems, they've got an infrastructure, it's a franchise. But like you said, I know exactly what's going to happen when I walk in this door, whether it be in Bath, New York, or Syracuse, or Oneonta, or Hawaii, or wherever I am. I know what's going to happen inside this restaurant. I know exactly what's going to be available. Now here, even though I'm going to guess it's probably better food, I don't know what's going to happen. Is the guy going to be grouchy? I don't know where to stand on the line, and the chips are in the way. I don't know what to do in this place, and I don't know what's going to happen. Now, apply that to your own agency, and apply it to every single facet of what we talked about. I mean, from employment to service utilization to anything. I don't know what the experience is going to be like, and that's what the whole ARC of US branding movement is really kind of about, even though I don't necessarily know that the same thing is going to happen if I go into a Florida ARC and I go into a New York ARC. But that's really what they're trying to build. Now, with that said, a lot of you have already established brands, and you have recognizable brands, and people do have trust and equity in those brands. So when you're thinking about how this branding is going to affect your marketing, that's definitely something to take into account. And any equity that you've built up, maintaining that is also critical. So bottom line, because I hear, when I talk about branding with our clients, I hear a million definitions of what it is and perceptions. But all brand is an impression. Now, branding are the actions that you take to make or change an impression. So if I go around and I survey your county and I say, what do you think of when I say ARC of XYZ, and they say whatever they say, that is your brand. If they say, I've never heard of it, that is your brand. If you engage in branding, you can basically change that. Now the good news is, as you venture into this arena, and if you do invest in changing your brand over, this is actually a really huge opportunity for you to get people to look at you again. And the people that you care about looking at you, whether it be donors or people that you want to utilize your services or the press or whoever it might be, if it's done correctly. Now there are a couple dangers, and I would say there's pretty significant dangers to working on your brand. One is doing it with a whisper. Basically, all of a sudden one day your logo's different and your name is different and you forgot to tell everybody. And the second item is doing it over time. This is often the most difficult for an agency to wrap their head around because they just ordered 20,000 letterhead, but they're changing their brand over, and what are we supposed to do with that letterhead? And the answer is throw the letterhead away, but nobody wants to hear that. So this can be a little bit challenging when we're talking about branding. So I'm going to give you a very basic, simplified rebranding process. If any of you are in the process of rebranding or considering rebranding. So this is can be a lot more complicated, but I've simplified it quite a bit. So the first item is we pick a day to launch the brand. So we say on March 5th, we're going to do the changeover. And on that day, the brand is completely switched. So before that day, you're one brand. On the day that you switch, you are another brand. And everything is that, and I'm giving you the ideal situation, not what you probably will do, but you're going to throw everything away on that day. Everything new is going to launch. All your signage gets unveiled. Everything is just completely switched over on one day. Now, during this process of the switch and everything, now you're all very well aware of what the ARC-US branding looks like. You've seen it. Your community, however, is not in the know. They probably haven't seen it. They may or may not have, but it doesn't mean you can't make a big buzz around it, keep it a secret, and kind of do a whole campaign around launching it. This one, another kind of a pitfall, is not involving your staff and board to the level that they should be involved. And the reason that it's so important to involve them and get them excited about this switch is these are the boots on the ground ambassadors for your brand. The employees and the board, these are the people that are out in the community talking about you. And if you just do a switch one day and you don't involve them and make them excited about it, they're not going to adopt it and be ambassadors for you, which is really critical. Now, I've seen agencies do every one of these items on this list wrong, some all of them, some just one of them, and there are repercussions to these things. So it's something to just really consider. Before you're doing your rebranding, obviously make lists of everything that you're going to need to change, because there's going to be a lot of things that you won't even think of. I've seen lists that are 3 pages long, from invoices to Excel documents to old PowerPoint templates. The list goes on and on. So really making a really concise list of everything that's going to need to change on that change day, and having everything in place, ordered, and ready to go on your switch. And obviously pre-budgeting. If you know you're going to do this, it's not really something to decide a month beforehand and then do, because even with the tightest of budgets, it's going to cost money to switch your branding over. And then finally, doing a marketing blitz about the change. This again is to make your constituency aware that there's been a change. So you might send teasers, mailers, you can use your existing marketing budget, basically just switch over the advertising to market your new brand. And then also making sure you hit all those groups, all those important groups, the press, the politicians, donors, people who are utilizing services, parents, families, employees, making sure you are getting the word out to all of them during that time. And it might be a 3-month ramp up, it might be the month before, it might be the day up. It's really dependent on your budget, but it's really important to make them aware. And then post your launch, and this is more when you're adjusting your name, you definitely want to keep evidence of your old brand around. When I say evidence, like something on your website that says something, just so people know they're still in the same place, and there's an explanation for the switch. Because a lot of times the local community will get the wrong idea. They'll think somebody bought you, or you got absorbed, or just things you don't want spreading around, especially in smaller towns and rural areas. You just want to be in control of that perception if you are making the change. So I included some of this branding, some of these branding comments, because I know this is something that's going around as far as being discussed, and in some cases is currently being done or already done. So just something to be aware of. And you can do, if you've already done this and you just kind of flipped everything over, just because you've done it doesn't mean people know that you've done it. So there's nothing wrong with going back and doing some of these things after the fact. But really, using the branding or the rebranding as an opportunity to get new eyes on you and get people to look at you with a fresh set of lenses can be a real benefit to your marketing. And again, all this is extremely foundational to your marketing. And when an organization doesn't invest in their brand, we are very wary of spending any significant dollars on marketing. Because it just doesn't, it's just throwing money at a problem, a Band-Aid that doesn't really solve anything. So let's talk a little bit about some of the media selection, especially on tight budgets. This is a big deal. No self-selection and avoid packages. So what this means is the radio station, the billboard company, the salespeople are going to come in and they're going to, and I'm not saying this is 100% of the time, but in our experience it's a lot of the time, and they're going to have packages where you're going to pay a very small amount of money, it might seem like, and you're going to get a whole lot of stuff. You're going to get ads on the radio station website, which they're telling you 300,000 people go on a day, and your county has 60,000 people in it, and somehow the other 100,000, a couple 100,000 appear out of nowhere. And they're going to seem too good to be true and good deals. And almost every agency we work with will buy into these things. And I'm not saying there aren't some deals out there. But no self-selection, actually, I didn't know how to word it. Really, it's don't let them self-select. So you're taking out a radio ad and you say, oh, just put me on the best spots for this age group. Here's what you get when you do that. You get the garbage. Because they have to sell their empty inventory. And agencies will tell them exactly what to do. And so they're taking all the good stuff, and you're basically saying, fill up the rest of the void. So a lot of times you're getting the scraps. And again, not always, there are exceptions. And this applies to billboards, this applies to radio, this applies to TV. You really have to think about your audience and select it. If you're working with an agency, you want to make them do it. But you really don't want to leave it to the media companies to select this for you, because you won't get the most impact for your dollar. And for a not-for-profit who has limited dollars and is trying to get the most impact possible, it's really important to take the time and think this through. Now, just a little bit about Billboard. No phone numbers and no websites. And this is, I know you're still going to do it anyway. But there is no value to a billboard except for, the branding value. And again, if you have no brand and no strength in your brand, what is the point of this billboard? I'm not saying that you couldn't do some amazing billboard campaign. This is just something I haven't seen in this industry done well. Now, if you've got a billboard up, and it's about your brand and how great you are, and people are driving by that, the same people, all day long, every day, you're making an impression. Now that impression will pay off over the long term. So that billboard needs to be a long-term investment, not a short-term investment. Putting it up for a month is good for maybe a big giant event you're having, but besides that, there's really no value to doing it. Billboards are great if you have a low street presence, like in other words, your offices are not seen from anywhere prominent. Sometimes a billboard can solve that problem. They're really good for branding. Now let's imagine, for our imaginary target, employment, we always have an employment issue, right? Your message is this really happy person, arc of XYZ, always hiring. And that message is seen all year on a really prominent road front, throughout the year. Think of the impact of that. Very simple. Oh, those guys are always hiring. So I need something, I want to look into something. Now obviously you have to screen people, you're going to, more people are going to come in and you want quality people. But something like this would be an effective use of a billboard.
Doesn't that imply, though, if they're always hiring, that they have a high turnover?
Well, I'm making up an example.
Okay.
This is an issue that affects every arc.
Right.
And my bigger concern with that would be quantity, not quality.
Okay.
So you might have more quantity of incoming applications and things, but hopefully someone in there would be in a good situation. And the other thing about a high turnover is, isn't that the case?
Well, it is the case. Well, it is the case.
Right. I mean, it is the case, but I think this is kind of a side issue, but there's one of the things we're working with a lot of our clients is being a little bit more in the when they go to the website, which is probably the first place they go, and they go to that employment page. First of all, being honest about what this job entails, but at the same time, making it as positive as it is. So really making it look show all the rewarding parts, but also hint at some of the challenges. So when they see the always hiring and then they go to the website and they say, oh, I have to actually interact with another human being, that's not for me. You know, so that's just a screening method. So doing a better job of selling it, because a lot of times the agency, you just go to their employment page and there's a picture and there's a bunch of text and there's an employment form. Well, we're not really doing a good job making a sale. And we also want more quality through that site and less quantity. So really trying to sell it, but at the same time be realistic about what we're selling. So, but you're absolutely right. I mean, all this messaging we want to have a concern with. Yeah.
Chris?
Yes.
So, like with billboards, like around Oneonta, there's an electronic billboard
Yes.
on 88.
Yeah.
So that the messages switch.
Yes.
So.
Yeah. Isn't that funny?
Well, I wonder. Well, because it's inexpensive, so I hear, why aren't we on that billboard?
Is it inexpensive?
It appears to be in
What's-
terms of total. I can't remember the price, but in total dollars, it wasn't really expensive.
The last I heard was $700 a month.
That's not what I saw.
Okay. Well,
But the other part of that is your messages. You're on. People are driving down the
Yeah.
interstate,
yeah.
and the thing flashes up, and then it goes
Yeah.
for a while, and then something else, and
Yeah.
then something else. So
I want to say, I did this directly to that billboard. It's one of the worst billboards in New York State. But, I mean, because if you come down 88, there's all these trees.
right.
And okay, so there's like 20 messages rotating on that board. So I don't know how much you drive down 88, but you see one for half a second. You have no time to read anything. It's not even good for branding. If I owned that billboard, I would go out in the middle of the night and chop down all those trees because it's on the other guy's property. So, but you bring up a really good point. I'm glad you brought up electronic, because electronic, they usually charge more for some reason, because it sounds fancy. I don't know, but you're sharing the real estate with other people. So in some cases, if it's a really great location, it can be worth it. In a lot of cases, though, it's not in the best location. Like, there's a lot in Albany. There's a lot of digital billboards in Albany. So they're switching between 4 messages typically, and those have you're seeing those for a good couple of minutes, and you're seeing almost all 4 of those while you're driving by. So those would have the value. The board in Oneonta, I hear that a lot too. Maybe we should be on that digital board in Oneonta, but no one's seeing the messaging and no one's reading them. So that's a good example of, you really have to look at what you're buying and does it make sense? And billboards are one of the worst offenders also of, when you call the billboard company and you say, we want to do a billboard, you don't want to drive all over the county looking at those boards to find the best one. So you just say, give me one with good presence. You get garbage all the time. All the good ones are bought a year in advance and booked. So if you're going to do billboard, it's a good idea to find the one you want on the road and then tell that company, I want that board. And they're going to say it's an 8-month wait, and you say, okay. And then you lock in on that board, and that's your board as long as you pay. But it's much better, because there's so much billboard junk out there.
Well, and I appreciate that, because I don't know if anyone else will hear that in their agency, because you hear, well, how come we're not on that? Well,
Yeah.
I don't think it's a very good use of our money. People don't say, well, at least it's something, it doesn't cost a lot, but
Yeah.
what you're really doing is just kind of throwing your money away.
Well, you know that billboard that's on your way to Morris, coming out of Oneonta past the All-Star Village?
Yes.
That's a good board.
Okay.
Great board. It's got all those people going to Cooperstown. It's got all the people going to Morris. It's got all that traffic. So,
Okay, thank you.
little side. There's just not a lot of good boards in that area. So we always say it's really good for branding. If you have a challenging budget, rotate this board on and off every other month. You're now on for a whole year with your billboard. You cut your budget for the billboard in half, and you are getting, in our opinion, the same exact effect. Because a lot of the billboard value, if you have a road with 10,000 people that go by a day, those 10,000 people are going to see that board throughout the year. Whether it's on every single month, they're going to get the same impression if it's on every other month. So you can actually cut your budget in half. A lot of the billboard companies will not charge you to do this. So let's say it's $500 a month, $6,000 a year. you spend $3,000 a year, you say put it on and off, and now you've got the same exact value in our opinion, from our experience. So that's a way just to save a little bit.
Chris, is that just for the electronic billboards? Because that
No, not electronic.
they would actually take that up and down.
They do, yeah, like a lot of the big ones will, if you're signing a year contract with them, like Park Outdoor or a lot of these other ones. Now, some of them do charge, like the bigger ones, like CBS and, yeah, they'll charge you, but it's a couple $100.
Because I know a lot of times they won't, they'll leave the billboard up until they have another buyer to come in, and so I've seen billboards up for a long time, and I don't think they're paying for it.
That's true too. Yep.
And that's actually an issue. We did a billboard campaign, and we did it through a nonprofit deal somehow, but the one billboard I remember was kind of going down towards Sullivan County. It was up for so long that it was tattered, and so you have to be careful about that too, because you want it to, have a polished image, and if it's, falling apart, so you have to.
And you can call them and tell them to deal with that.
Yeah.
Or if there's plants growing in front of it, they'll go out and deal with it, especially if you're a recurring customer. Now, just a side note, a lot of you have locations where you could put up a billboard. You could literally put a billboard on top of your building or on the road, or you could do a digital sign on the road that talks about different things that are upcoming. This is free. Once you pay for the sign, you get a free billboard forever that's advertising something. It could be employment, it could be donations, it could be service utilization, it could be look at us, we're great. But when we talk about a budget, you pay to have this put up, and then you have this messaging street side just forever. So obviously it's dependent on your location and the availability and things like that, if it's going to work. But we work with an agency with great street presence, and they were talking about investing in a digital sign. Just a small digital sign that would talk about their upcoming events and different things that they're working on. So this can be a really good idea. I know a lot of you have multiple locations in real estate, so it's something to look at. Now, I just put this here because I put amounts under the different media. This is a number that we think you could plug in to do something with Billboard. When you get much less than this, you're talking about much lower quality boards, you're talking about shorter runs, so this is kind of a number where I think you can be effective with Billboard. And I just put that in because a lot of times there's just no idea even what a Billboard campaign would cost. Yes.
Would that be would you consider a statewide average?
No, this is, I'm sorry, I'm guessing that you are non-rural and you're in a city?
We're close to downstate.
Okay, what market?
Ulster County.
Okay, so Ulster County is going to be a lot more, is going to be different, is going to be higher. I'm so used to being upstate.
It's okay. I'm just curious.
A lot of our clients are down in the city, but somehow I mean, you could.
We're not in the city, but nevertheless.
No, but Ulster County, you've got commuters, you've got it's much higher populace, higher income levels, so the value of the board is higher. But this is something where you could be semi-effective. Okay, radio's tough. Radio is something that I avoid typically. I'm not saying it doesn't have its value, but the problem with radio in this day and age is that we're competing with a whole lot of stuff. We're competing with satellite radio, we're competing with iPods, podcasts, all these different types of things. There's still a market for it, but the prices really haven't come down to reflect the lower audiences. So it's really important to understand that radio is about quantity and quality. You really have to slam people repeatedly, I would say one station, with the same message over and over again. And it's really got to be the right audience and the right message. Otherwise, you really won't see much of a return. People just tune out mentally for these types of things. It's really important to know your demo. If you're doing a fundraising campaign on the local radio station for large gifts, you are doing the wrong thing. If you're doing an event promotion where you want people to show up to, I don't know, some type of golf outing or something, then perhaps, if it's done correctly, it might be right. Again, the $3,500 a year is something where you could get something done.
Chris?
Yes?
Some radio stations are offering packages with the radio station and when they're streaming, so if people are downloading it, what do you think about that? Or they're doing it just streaming, because that's a whole different advertising?
The streaming, it's hard to say the actual use. If they were here now, they would tell us. I know it. They'd say 20,000 people a day log in and listen to our streaming radio broadcast. So I don't necessarily know that there's a lot of value there. To me, the streaming is the same as the radio. It's just another way to tune into the radio. So when they say, oh, it's streaming also, I say, so they're just using a different device to listen. So it's the same numbers. So it's just something to keep in mind. That's one of the things that they'll do. They'll say things like streaming, you know, just or people going on our website and website visits. And actually then they'll talk about website visits, and most of their website visits are people going to listen to the streaming. So they double dip into the numbers sometimes. So it's something just to think about. I really think radio's good for events, and it's to certain demographics, and really just understanding, you know, what that is. Employment, possibly. If there was, like, again, a campaign running all year long, like if you're this type of person who's looking for a position, you know, we're always hiring and come talk to us, da da da. That could theoretically work as well, as long as it's a lot of quantity. So print. Now print is interesting because there is a whole lot of people, believe it or not, that still read the newspaper and look at that newspaper from cover to back every single day. So it's not something to totally throw out. Now, we always recommend larger ads, less frequency. Because you have people who are looking at this paper religiously, they're going to see your ad, whether it's in there every day or every 5 days. But the people, in our experience, that don't look at the paper, don't look at the paper. The people that do so regularly and religiously. So you don't need to hit them every day. And so where you fall in, I would much rather see you do larger ads, less frequent, and also really knowing your demo. It is an older demo that will be looking at the newspaper. And then obviously your placement. Just a little trick. We always recommend right hand page, right hand side of the page. Big ads. Minimal content and copy, not a ton for them to read. So television, just some basic recommendations. Television's very difficult now. It's not cheap. There's a million channels. People are TiVoing. They're skipping commercials. People are watching TV on the internet. You're up against a lot with TV. But you know, placement is key, making sure that you're looking at the demographics of where you're advertising. A good bet with TV for everyone is the local news. The 6 o'clock, the 10 o'clock news is kind of a sure bet, and the prices will reflect that, but you will know you're getting a certain audience with that placement. We actually recommend heavy rotation 15-second spots on and off, which means instead of a 30-second spot, you do a 15-second commercial to get more spread out of your placement. And then even every other week, something like that to spread out your budget. But what you don't want is kind of letting the TV station figure this out for you and say, oh, it's going to run 3 months every single day, and it's going to be a 30-second ad. And when you can, avoid having the TV station make the ad for you. Sometimes it's better if you do it yourself with your iPhone than what they're going to give you.
Right.
And again, with TV, you have to spend a little bit more. Direct mail, I'm going to start to speed up because I think I'm running out of time. Direct mail, I hear all the time that, how much time do I have?
10:15. So you have a while.
Okay, I'm going to go slow. Direct mail, I always hear direct mail doesn't work. But then when I say, well, what did you do and how did you run it? It's always the completely wrong answer. First of all, you need to get your expectations on direct mail in a good place. A 1 to 2% return on direct mail is considered good. 1 to 2% return. Now, if you determine a 1 to 2% return on sending out 5,000 mailers is not worth it, don't do the direct mail. You have to figure out if the return is worth the investment. That's the first thing. If you're talking about 5–10% returns on direct mail, you have cracked a code, and that is amazing. Typically, it's a 1 to 2% return.
Right.
The consistency of the direct mail is an issue. How often are you sending this direct mail? A one-shot is a failure. The 1 to 2% is if you send that direct mail 3 times. That's if you send the direct mail 3 times. The percentage goes down if you're not sending it 3 times. So you have to send direct mail 3 times. Does it look good? Is it interesting looking? Is the message compelling to the audience? Is your list a solid list? You're doing a fundraising campaign for large gifts. I hope that that list is a really, really good list, and I hope this message compels them to do something. And then this is the only thing that will increase the 1 to 2%. If you send out a mailer to 500 people and you have all 500 of those people called after the mailer to say, did you receive this, and here's what we'd like you to do, your percentages can go up into the 5, 6, 7%. But this will often never be done because it involves calling. But this is actually a great activity for volunteers. If you have volunteers and you want to put them to work, it's also the activity that they won't want to do.
Right.
Because it's very painful, but it's very effective. Now I'm going to cover something that we think is very exciting. Okay, I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the tools that are available. Yes?
Before you move on to the electronic.
Yes.
What about more non-traditional advertising, like placemats, bumper stickers?
Yeah.
I got a call the other day from a salesman who does ads on movie screens.
Yeah.
Do we see any ROI on those?
Well, I mean, we could talk about each of those individually, and they, like, I mean, we could talk about the movie screens do have some value. Again, knowing your audience and who's at that movie theater is of value. Some of the things you described, we put in what we call grassroots, which I should probably cover it here, but grassroots is literally printing out flyers at the office and then going to the local church and the local organizations and hanging them up. And grassroots has a lot of, grassroots actually works really well because it doesn't cost anything, so anything you get back can be really good. So anything like that, like a bumper sticker, handouts at local organizations, those things are definitely worthwhile. It's almost like you need your own little mini strategy to mobilize the volunteers and what's being created and distributed. But absolutely, you know, some of those other things like placemats at diners. Placemats at diners actually sometimes work for plumbers and pizza, and so I'm wondering what you put on a placemat. But absolutely, if the message is right for that audience, people do see that, and if it's a very clear thing that's appropriate for them, it could work. Absolutely. Yeah. So if you can remember one thing while I'm talking, because about this. It's really important you understand what I'm talking about is not social media. But I'm going to say things like Facebook and Twitter, so it's going to get confusing. What I'm about to talk about is using the social media platforms, but it is not social media. It's not coming up with great content. It's not having a social media strategy. This is about using these tools to advertise. So here's the benefits. These benefits, I cannot say this about with any of the other tools that I talked about. Awareness, guaranteed. Event and promotional awareness, guaranteed. Following increase, guaranteed. All of these things are going to be guaranteed. People are going to know about your organization, they're going to know about what you're doing, and your social media followings are going to go up. Guaranteed. 100% guaranteed. So you've all seen Facebook, I hope, by now. Facebook is very popular. 1/2 of the United States is on Facebook, all that good stuff. Again, I'm not talking about social media. You have seen advertising in the last year pop up on Facebook. Now, this is what we're used to, these ads over here. These are good for selling sunglasses and magnets, not really much else. But over here, we can now pay to put sponsored posts directly in between pictures of the grandkids and your local newspaper. We can put a sponsored post. Now this is so incredible because of the targeting. We can basically say everybody between these ages that lives in this county that is interested in this, show them a sponsored post. So you're having a golf event that you want to just be a blockbuster year. You say, okay, we know that our average player is between the ages of 35 and 65. 35 and 65, only in the county of XYZ. Only that has identified or looks at things related to golf, show them a sponsored post related to that.
This is
The targeting and everything is so precise and right in front of that person. And here's the kicker, you only pay if they take an action. So if they don't click it on this, you don't pay. You only pay if they click on it and go to your website and take some type of action. No other marketing can boast this, so it can be incredibly effective. Now, so for Facebook, obviously very effective audience build, targeted, you only pay for action. We always recommend an organization tries to experiment with $500 a month for a few months, making sure to adjust it and look at it and see what's going on. And then once you do that, seeing if it's something that's worth it that you want to invest further in. Yes?
Can you talk about the difference of boosting a post as opposed to what you're talking about?
Yeah. Boosting a post, basically, you're on your Facebook page and it says boost post, and you click boost post, and it just basically gives you less settings. You're just boosting it, it boosts it to your audience.
Or demographic that you choose.
And you can put in the demographic info, but if you were actually to go in manually into the back end, you have more options available to you to boost that post. It's the same thing.
Yeah, no, I know, but you're saying, so with boosting it, you can't go and do demographics and figure out who you want it targeted to as opposed to just your friends or whomever.
Boosting is just a marketing term. It's the same as going in and doing this.
But you pay a fee,
set fee.
yeah, whether people click on it or not.
The per clicks, I'm confused on
You
that.
pay for an action. You pay when they click.
No.
No, you put in $100, but then it eats away at the budget as they click.
Really?
You boost posts for $50, and then as they take action and click, it eats away at that budget. You can go into reporting and it'll show you all the clicks and actions.
Yeah, I didn't realize that's what happened either.
Yeah, unless they change things every day. They might have changed it last week and I don't know, but that's how it works.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're only paying when they click.
So I paid, I forget, was $1 a day is the minimum. So I pay for a week campaign, I pay $7.
Yeah, that's really low.
I'm just, I'm not saying it's what I did, I'm just.
Because the reason it breaks.
$25 boost or a $50.
Yeah, the reason you can set the day is if you want that campaign to pace itself.
So then, I don't get it either, I'm not understanding.
So you boost post for $100.
Yeah.
And let's say every time somebody clicks, it's 50 cents. 50 cents is going to eat away at that $100 until the $100 is gone.
So if I see on my credit card that I was charged the full amount, I did well, basically.
Yeah.
Okay.
We set up campaigns all the time, and in the beginning, we have to make adjustments because they're not spending. People aren't clicking. Now, Facebook really wants you to take your money, so they find ways to get people to click. So, that's something always to be aware of, but same thing with Google advertising. If people don't click, you don't pay.
I didn't realize either.
And you get a report, like a report shows up, if you're the administrator, when you go in, you get the report that shows how many clicks you had, when they did it, and so you know how much money is being spent.
We required, I didn't know report, but I didn't know it was by click, I didn't know.
Well, it's an action, so if they do anything, if they like you, if they like the post, if they click a link, it eats away at the budget. Yeah. The other thing to know about Facebook advertising, if you pay Facebook, they place your natural posts with more prominence than other organizations. So the organizations that pay Facebook get better placement with their posts than organizations that don't. Facebook's a business and that's their prerogative and that's what they do. So it's just something to keep in mind as well. So very effective if done properly. And targeted and only paying for action. I can't recommend it enough. Okay, YouTube advertising, you've all been on YouTube. And you've noticed more and more of these ads, these little mini 15-second ads that play before the video you want to watch. The reason this is important for you to know, well, first of all, we know a lot of people use YouTube. I don't have to tell you that. But with the targeting, you can actually say, again, only people in our county, only people watching videos about golf, show them a 15-second ad for our golf tournament that's coming up. Only people watching videos about XYZ between these ages, show them a 15-second video about how great it is to work here. So you're basically putting your, and especially if you're doing a TV campaign, you can have whoever did the editing edit down a 15-second or a 5-second or a 10-second version, and play that before the videos that are on YouTube at an absolute fraction of the cost because it's so absolutely targeted. You can go broad with the campaign too. You can say everybody in the county, but you could get specific based on the things that they're watching on YouTube, based on what they're interested in. You could have people who are watching videos about different developmental disability type topics. Before the video, show them an ad for you as an alternative for services or donations or whatever it might be. Extremely effective. And again, only paying when they click on that ad to go to the website. So they're only paying for an action. So when someone questions your expenditure, you say, well, we only paid when people went to our website. I increased our website visits by 10,000 people last month. What else can we say that about? Any other marketing? None. So it can be very effective. Again, trial, $500 a month is a good thing to do. Now, Google advertising, I bring this up because Google advertising is what will force you to come up when people do search. This is what we call at the time of need advertising. The most effective type of advertising. So I need a job. I need a organization to find services for my son. I'm going to put in XYZ service. Most of you probably aren't coming up. With Google advertising, we can force that to happen. So you identify, again, going back to the strategy, who the audience is. We say, okay, the audience is we want increased service utilization for our school program. And then we say, okay, well, increased service utilization for the school program. When people search XYZ daycare or XYZ school or whatever, we're going to force us to come up, number one, as an option. So that is someone who is searching at the time of their need, and you are presenting yourself to them as the solution to that search. They actually say 90% of Google advertising dollars are wasted, and that's only because the campaigns are usually set up too broad or just wrong. So too broad would be, a big mistake, you've seen it a million times, is I search Quicken, and Quicken is basically paying to come up under the search term for their own name. That's an example, that's an obvious example of waste. Or someone is searching for the local ARC and you're paying to come up. Really you want to come up for those specific things that you are quote unquote trying to sell. This doesn't need to be a very expensive thing. It can be something that you just put a couple $100s a month, and basically just to ensure that when people are directly searching for what you want to sell them, you're coming up as an option. Because in a lot of cases you're not. And another thing to understand about Google and the way it works is sometimes you'll do a search for something and you'll come up and you think we're doing well. But Google is location-based search. So you can go home and try this. If you search pizzeria at home, the local pizzerias will come up. If you search it here on your laptop, the pizzerias in this town will come up. So just because you're doing okay in one place doesn't mean you're doing okay in another. So investing a little bit in Google advertising is a good idea to make sure when people are looking for you and considering what you are selling, that you're coming up.
Chris,
yes.
Could you just speak to the difference between SEO and paid advertising?
Yep. SEO basically is making sure, now SEO has become a lot simpler. It used to be a big science and you have to go in the code and do all this stuff. Now, SEO, search engine optimization, the most important thing that you can do is making sure that the words you want to be found under are on your website. If I want to be found when someone searches employment opportunities in Otsego County and those words aren't on my website, you're not coming up. It's that simple. The words have to be on your website. So SEO is the process of affecting the natural results. And that's more difficult because everybody wants free results. So you're competing against a lot of other people, even people not even in your industry, for coming up for those terms. Whereas the AdWords is paying Google. You're paying them off to get you up on the list when people do those searches. So SEO is very important because the natural results have value. A lot of times I'll hear, oh, well, I never click on the ads. Well, research shows that most people don't know the difference between the ads and not the ads. But also, when you do click on the ads, you're in shopping mode. You're looking for a solution, you want to buy, you click on the ad because you don't want to, you want to cut right to the person that's trying to sell. So it can be, you know, extremely effective. So SEO is just about doing it naturally, and Google's about paying for it. I mean, advertising, Google advertising. So Google advertising, very low cost. It's almost, actually, I skipped over one little thing as I'm running out of time, but you know, trying a few $100s a month, we recommend. Now, just a brief note on fundraising. I think you covered this. I think you covered some of this yesterday, so I'm just going to briefly mention this. I think a lot of you know this. Sometimes CEOs don't always get this, but large gifts is about relationships, not marketing. Marketing demonstrates impact, confidence, and reach. So, all of your marketing efforts affect fundraising because donors, especially ones that aren't connected with you, want to give to organizations that they deem significant for their own. I want to give to someone who's significant, and also just because, quite frankly, for ego. I mean, you want to give to an organization that they're at the so-and-so cocktail party and they say, I gave to this organization, and the person they say that to recognizes that name. This is all inherent value that you build up with the marketing that makes the ask easier. So the marketing, in our opinion, unless you're doing like a capital campaign or direct fundraising, but even that's direct marketing. This is the marketing that you're doing that we just described all affects fundraising in that way for large gifts, any gifts over $1,000. These are the gifts that are about relationships. The marketing strengthens and those relationships and makes those relationships easy. And that's just something to just, I think, keep in mind as an explanation of why we're not, you know, marketing for large gifts. I'm sure a lot of you know that. So, just a brief note on crowdfunding. I think you talked about it yesterday, but I can't believe it. It actually works. I mean, it kind of blows my mind that it works. So you put together a crowdfunding campaign where you are looking for something specific. You want a specific dollar for a specific project. And then you go out to your audience and you empower your staff to go out to their audiences. Their audiences are their Facebook people and their Twitter people. And you have them, you tell them what they're doing, and you push on all these people to give $10, $20. And you give them something in return, whatever it might be. The Songs for NYSARC CD, the free t-shirt, whatever it is. And then people will actually donate, and you can actually raise, in some cases, significant sums of money. And it works really well for smaller organizations, as long as you use your, especially, almost, if you use that online advertising I mentioned, to boost it out to an audience and say, this is what we're doing, and this is how we're helping, and da-da-da-da-da, people will give. So if you have a small goal, like a $20,000 goal, and you're in a rural community, you can use a tool like this to raise that. It actually does work very well. The different tools, some of them are structured differently. You want to use one of the tools where if you don't raise all the money, you get some of it. Because with like Kickstarter, if you don't get all the money, they give it all back. So you want to use a tool where if you don't get to the 20,000, you're at 17,000, you get to keep it. So that's us. Just a little bit about us real quick. You know, what we do is we do brand development, web online outreach, advertising campaigns, video production, those types of things. Most of our clients are human services, with almost half being in the fields of mental health, developmental disability, and intellectual disability. And we are a real company with real employees, and we help our clients. And when I say that, it's a lot of companies out there, you don't really know where everybody is, but all our people are real. And we help organizations like yours figure some of these things out, whether it be the whole marketing or the branding or just small pieces of it. Any questions about any of that? All experts? Well, thank you so much for having me.